Today I'll be putting together and converting my Carcharodon Scouts. Because the Carcharodons are not a Codex chapter and were exiled from the Imperium before the Horus Heresy, I'm going to do some fairly heavy converting to the Scouts. I've got 5 Mark IV heads that I'll be using for replacement Scout heads because the Scout heads are awful. And I would like to have these armoured for void combat. So let's very quickly pop off a Scout body, see if these heads will fit. They do. They'll probably need a bit of trimming down here so they don't have gigantic necks, but they fit. The other thing I'll need to do is I'll need to remove the Aquillas from every single chest piece. So if I zoom in, you can see the fairly prominent Aquila on every chest piece. The issue with that is Carcharodons were exiled before the Aquila became popular. The only Carcharodon model with an Aquila is Tyberos, who has a small Aquila here. None of the other Carcharodon models in my army have got Aquillas. I'd love it if they did a new Tyberos model, because he's also the shortest Terminator in my army. Because he's doing the GW power squat, and all the other Terminators are doing the new standing tall Terminator pose. So these heads will fit into the Scout bodies, though they may well need a bit of trimming down to get them to fit nicely. But they'll do it. The Aquillas will have to be removed, and I'll probably use green stuff to smooth that out. I've also got Sector Imperialis bases to mount these on, so I'll be mounting them on 32mm bases. And they'll be my first Scout squad. I'll have another squad of Scouts to do, that'll be my Sniper Scouts. And again, I'll use... the Sniper Scout heads are actually quite a bit better than the original Scout sprue. I may keep those, but I may convert them to have rebreathers. So, I'll be back in a minute with all the stuff separated from the sprue, the armament choices made, and I'll have trimmed off and smoothed out the Aquillas on the chest pieces. So we'll be back in a moment. I've put together the pieces for the first of the Scouts that I'll be doing as a test model to see how they look. So I've got the base. Let's, as the first step, stick the legs to it. So we're putting it, by putting the legs a little forward of the centre point, I create the atmosphere that the model is advancing. I also then have this back piece here, which is high, the highest point of the base, framing the rest of the base. I might even put something on there like a skull, because you can never have too many skulls in 40k. Though to be fair, this model only has 1, 2, 3, 4. It only has 4 skulls on it. So, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the body to the legs. As you can see, I've removed the Aquila. It's fairly smooth, it'll look a little better when there's paint on it. I've not removed the winged skull and the bolter because that looks fine, to be fair. I don't see anything wrong with that. However, next thing to note, the Scout kit is a fairly old kit. It was produced back in 2005, which is 12 years ago, and it is showing its age. The heads aren't particularly good. The bolters and shotguns are integral to the arms, instead of being an arm, a separate weapon and hands, which means you can't switch the bolters around particularly easily. You can't leave the centre of the model clear to let you paint it easily. So when I stick this bolt arm on, it covers pretty much the entire chest. start with a bit of glue. There we go. The next piece is going to be the other arm. And I'm just going to dab glue on the inside of that hand, because now comes all the fun of lining this up. Like so. There. Okay. I've dug this out. I've also cut down and trimmed this headpiece here, so that should just fit in like that. So it's sighting down the bolter. Like so. And then I'll use this little grenade and pouch thing to cover up some of what a mess the waste is. And again, you've got to be careful with this. There we go. Bang. Test model done. The addition of the heads from only a couple of years ago make a huge difference in the model, I think. So it's a lot lighter than, well, a lot smaller in size terms than many of the other models, particularly things like the Mark III armour. I'll do a comparison alongside in a little bit when I've assembled some more. But yeah, that's my first test model. I'm now going to assemble a sergeant and a shotgun trooper. So as you can see, I've removed the Aquillas, I've drilled the barrels. It's time to start putting things together. One. Two. So, see if there's a good place to put the equipment on the back. So that one will go there quite nicely. But yeah, you can certainly tell these are from 2005 because there's not a lot of stuff on the sprue, and quick dry fit. The mould lines on the Scout sprue are very prominent. Which means it takes you quite a while to get rid of them. So, and with that done, it's time to glue these down to the bases. That's fallen right off, which means there's probably not enough points of contact. The shotgun leaves a decent amount of bare space on the chest, so let's look and see if that'll fit on there with that on there. I think the answer to that is yes. So a little bit of glue. And right next to the skull on the chest piece. Come on. Go. So if you can add some additional pieces like that, it gives the model more of a special forces, carrying lots of equipment feel. Let's dry fit this on. Yeah. Next is the head, so let's look at how we're going to pose that. Like that, with him sighting down the barrel. Done. So on this guy, who's hopefully now a bit drier, we don't have to worry about things crossing the chest. So, with the sergeant, because we're putting the arms on like this, we don't have to worry about things crossing the chest, which means we can put another piece of equipment on the chest. And it doesn't have to be right next to the skull, it can be there. So, as you can see, that's going on there. This goes on this side. This goes on the other side. And then we have a look at where we're going to put the head. So, a quick dry fit, like so. And then like so. So that's the shotgun and the sergeant done, and the bolter that I did earlier. So it's just the second bolter and the heavy bolter left to do. I'll be back with those in a minute. I'm now going to assemble the last two models, a second bolter guy and the heavy bolter. So once again, I'm going to start with attaching the bodies. I've made sure that the heavy bolter is the one with the 2 feet firmly on the ground compared to the others. So now to attach the equipment pieces. leave that to dry for a minute. And then it's time to stick them down to the bases. 1, 2, and now we look at, because I'm looking at this and there seems to be no obvious place to put this backpack. Okay, heavy bolter will go on like this, so there's definitely nowhere to put stuff on the chest. But we'll actually start with attaching the bipod to the bolter, because it's going to be a lot less fiddly doing it now than doing it later. And the key with this is getting the arms right, which is why it's important to put both of them on at the same time. So that is where that needs to go. There we go. I'm going to leave that to dry for a minute, then I'm going to put it back on the base. So that was a pain. Let's hope this is less painful. Looks like it will be. Yeah, you've got to bear in mind that the age that this kit is, it wasn't digitally sculpted, like the newer kits from the Carnifex onwards, which means everything isn't accurate down to the last millimetre, and you end up with things that fit, but not necessarily completely exactly. Okay. Head to go on. Done. Shoulder pad, and now let's dry fit the head. Like so. There we go. So, looking at the squad as a whole, sergeant, 2 bolters, a shotgun and a heavy bolter. So that'll be good for Shadow War Armageddon, but I'm mainly painting up for the beginning of 8th edition. So it's probably the last Carcharodon unit that I'll paint up before 8th edition hits, and then it'll be the Primaris Marines. But as you can see, the addition of a more modern head makes a big difference. I'm going to leave these to dry and for the cement to finally set for about 20 minutes, and then I'm going to hit them with an undercoat. I'll paint them in a separate video along with painting the Dark Eldar jet bike that I've done. I'm going to go with a fairly simple scheme, but overall my opinions of the Scout sprue from 2005 are: it's not the hardest plastic kit I've ever had to work with. That's so far been some of the Zaveda ones that I've reviewed in other videos, but it's not great. I look forward to when they redo it, which they hopefully will. But there's nowhere near the problems with the Scout Sniper sprue, which was done a number of years later. The only reason I've got these is because they're in the Shadow War Armageddon box. So it's a cheap unit to add to my Carcharodon force. I don't know if Infiltrate will be in 8th edition. We'll see, but it's a cheap little objective grabbing unit that I can use to back up my tactical squads and my hordes of Terminators. So if you've liked this video, hit like and subscribe, leave a comment below. I'll see you in the next video.